Okay, here we are with Jeffrey's. You pronounce it Jeffory, Jeffory,
Yes.
Jeffory Schofield, and Guy Armstrong. Jeffory, I'll just let you each say a little bit about yourselves. Just, I know we've done other videos before, and people that are watching these videos are probably familiar with both of you. But for the new people, let's just give a brief introduction.
I'll start then. I live near St. Louis, Missouri, so that's the part of the world I'm calling in on. And I am a retired chiropractor and a certified body electronics instructor. Had several cranials, as well as the whole everything, all the education classes for the instructor seminar. So it's a pleasure to be with both of you today. Let's have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. Hey everybody, my name is Guy Armstrong. I'm from Wellington, New Zealand. I first got involved in body electronics in around 1996, I think it was. And I've been a pretty active student of it since that time. Been to 3 of Illia's intensives. Highly recommend them. And eventually, well, maybe I think about 7 or 8 years ago, I had my first cranial electronics. It was pretty cool here in New Zealand. And yeah, I've done a lot of different jobs professionally, but currently I'm working in a call center service kind of thing.
What kind of service?
Customer service.
Well, customer service.
Yeah, just I work for a bank.
Oh, okay.
Great. So everybody,
right. Yeah, great. Glad to have some time with you, Guy. Yeah.
Likewise.
Yeah, like you said earlier, Jeffory, we're triangulating here with the 3 points.
Yeah, so you up there in northern British Columbia and Guy down in or over. I don't know. I'm a flat earther myself, but most people on here probably think we live on a ball. Anyway, it's still a triangulation from 3 different points on the surface of the earth. So
well,
energetically,
I'm a round kind of gal. So, and I'm in southern. I think it would be considered southern British Columbia, near. I'm out in the mountains, in the Kootenay Mountains near Nelson. So I'm right above, in as far as the U.S. is, I'm almost right above Spokane.
Oh, okay.
That's where I am. So for the I want to do these discussions around body electronics. And we talked earlier that we might do these weekly. So I'm we'll keep it fluid, but we'll shoot for weekly. And then that gives us some, just gives us some things to build upon. So this morning I was outside. I have these massive trees. I have a massive cedar tree and a massive Douglas fir. Many trees, but 2 of them are just absolutely massive, just right near the home. And I go out often, several times a day, and I sit out there and just listen and enjoy the birds and the external as well as the internal. And this morning, what came to me was how we see body electronics as a holistic construct. So we see it as the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, and we see that as a sequence of progression. So the physical being the foundation, and we see that as sequential in that evolutionary process. But what I was seeing this morning was it's so much more complex than that. We can simplify it in those 4 categories, but to really look at it in its complexity. I mean, I don't think what came to me was it's infinite in its complexity. So within the the physical realm. I mean, we can say this is a physical principle, and we can do this and this and this in order to move the energy in a certain direction. Yet within that, the frequency is infinite within that physical construct. And then when we jump into the emotional, it's the same. It's like infinite frequency. And it's what really I am getting at is not to keep it in such a box, not to keep that holistic construct in such a box that we think of it in certain ways, or we think of it in certain as certain beliefs, but really keep it fluid, really keep that fluidity throughout that process. Yeah. Just something very simple, but simplicity. And, that's a very core duality, right? The simplicity into complexity, simplicity into complexity. And we see that as we move, as we're moving, throughout the emotional body, particularly, we see that this, reflected in the sine wave of that. We come back to the overlapping of unconsciousness, and then we get enthusiasm again. Well, things become very simplistic there. That's the simplicity within the emotional body. And then we move back, and we keep going up forward. Hopefully we're going in an upward scale, and we're moving then into complexity. Complexity peaks at the heart. It peaks in the heart thymus. And then as we continue up from the heart thymus to the pineal, it goes back into simplicity.
Oh.
So that very, I think that's such a foundational and fundamental duality to be aware of as we're and the paradox with unconsciousness, which is level 7, which is at the connected in the physicality to the gonads. So the simplicity of that, and then moving through complexity to get back to simplicity, which is God in you, or what we call love in body electronics in the pineal. Excuse me. Yeah, so just having that foundation of that duality. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about duality today. So anybody have anything to say on that, or anything else?
What type of duality were you on? Did you specify a type of duality, or just
Well,
any
I'm talking
type?
about the simplicity and complexity duality.
That duality. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and how they're at either end of the spectrum.
Is that also where, like, fear and above is heat coming out of the body, and fear and below is cold coming out of the body? Is that the same junction we're talking about?
Well, if it's involutionary, so if we were going from complexity to simplicity, so from in the emotional body, from the heart to the gonads, anywhere in between, if we're going downscale or in an involutionary way, we would be seeing that as cold, as an endothermic reaction is being thrown out of the body. And when we're going from the heart to the pineal, we're going in an involutionary process, which is evolutionary is what we're shooting for here. Evolutionary process, going upscale, then we're going to have an exothermic reaction in the body. So that's where the burning fire of the Kundalini comes in. It's where the burning in the points, and often the internal burning that we experience, when we're point holding.
Yeah. There are some really good explanations on those in the logic and sequence books, if you want to get really, really into the sort of
meat and potatoes.
Yeah, meat and potatoes. Yeah, the complexities within simplicity and complexity.
Right. Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, the logic and sequence series was written. There are 3 books, and they were written by Dr. John Whitman Ray, who's the founder of Body Electronics. Passed away in 2001. And those books can be accessed free of charge on my website. I've put them on Scribed, and they're there. You can download them, you can print them. John didn't leave a will, and it's I have been given the internal go-ahead to provide those books, to the general public free of charge. They won't be published again. There was only 1,500 of them made, and they won't be published again. It was my dear friend Jim Graham, who was the benefactor behind those books back in the day. So yeah,
He supplies the finances to get those published.
he did.
Bless his heart.
Yeah.
How's he doing anyway?
He passed away. Jim passed away.
I thought we discussed that. I remember him at the seminars. Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He was a good egg.
Yeah, that's for sure. He's one of his things he always said was he keeps how did he say it now in his New Zealand accent? He keeps his God close. I think that was one of the things that he was a really powerful body electronics instructor, and he never instructed formally, but he was always instructing, wherever he was. And he was, he was a farmer, right? He was, he had, in his later years, he had vineyards down in New Zealand, near Blenheim. And he was, really involved in that, and really, really loved that. And so anybody that he kind of got a name, people would come to him, and he would hand them a bottle of liquid minerals, which to get them down to New Zealand, you know how much they cost, right? And shipping, I think, would probably be twice as much as they're worth. And so he would hand, a person a gallon of liquid minerals, and tell them to come back when they finished it. And that's all he would do. He wouldn't give them any information. He wouldn't say anything to them, or he would just tell them to go ahead and do that. And he would laugh about it, because of course most people never came back. But yeah, Jim was I think it's been 4 years since he's passed.
Okay.
Maybe actually going on to the 5th year now, because I believe it was 2018.
Wow.
Yeah, he had written me. He didn't have a computer or anything like that, but we had a go-between, a woman in Blenheim who was willing to be our. We wrote letters, but to get a little quicker, we had this go-between. So I would message her, or send her an email, and then she would take it out to Jim, and then come back and then write his response to me. And the last message I got from him, it was he died on January 30th, and this was in December, just around Christmas time. He wrote me a message, or he sent me a message through this woman, saying that right as soon as he got his health in order, he was going to come up to Canada and visit. And of course that didn't happen.
That's real cool.
Yeah. But we kept in touch, over the years, even though the last time I saw him was 2000, and I think the last time I saw him was 2005, or maybe he did come in 2007. I'm not sure.
Wow.
But yeah, that was the last.
Wow.
The VNC, of course, the Visualization and Consciousness course, he was there for that. So that was a month. Jeffory was present for that as well. And that was quite a powerful time.
Yeah. Now, I can't remember how. Maybe you gave me his phone number, but I spoke with him on the phone. Would have been, I don't know, 2015, 2016.
Yes.
That time. Yeah.
Okay.
Had a real calmness to his voice. It just sounded like a very sort of centered, gentle kind of person.
Oh yeah, solid. solid human being.
Yeah.
He was a fantastic point holder. He never gave in and never gave up. You know, we used to, if somebody was a really, you know, really needed a lot of energy to get their points going, Doug would put Jim and I on together on someone.
Wow.
And I can remember like holding spinal points, for instance. There was this fellow, his whole spine, I've told this story before in other videos, but he came into the course and he had a really, really, really intense hunchback. And he was probably, I would say it would be close to 60. So it, you know, was fairly calcified, long-term calcifications. And he got to some really, really deep stuff around being bullied by his mother and how he perceived that. And then, of course, he created that in a wife. And so he had this, you know, and his cervicals, particularly his C7 was really pronounced. And, you know, he was just, and he had that, you know, he was, you know, this was his body, his posture. So after, it wasn't right away, he had to have gone through several endocrine points in order to get to the spinals. But when he got to the spinals, he put Jim and I on. And I remember we were both holding, I was up around T4, T5, and Jim was in the lumbar area. And I was on one side, he was on the other. I was on the left side of the body, and Jim was on the right side of this man's body. And after about maybe an hour and a half, the spine was literally starting to move underneath our elbows. I mean, we don't go on the spine, of course, for people who don't know what we're talking about. We go beside the spine. We put the pressure, you know, with the elbow in a very particular way, like into the spine. We're not actually touching the spine. And that spine started to crack and crack and crack and crack. And he was going through, you know, really going through some great transmutation. You know, he had all three aspects, the emotions, the word patterns, and the memory. And he was really, really, really going for it. And when he literally got up from that table, he was, we wished after that we had checked how, what his height was before he got on. But of course we don't, you know, we don't know what's going to happen. But he was at least a good 2 inches taller.
Wow.
And he maintained it too throughout, you know, like, you know, I don't know what happened to him. I don't think he came back to another event, but he maintained that throughout the entire rest of it. You know, it wasn't like, you know, he got off and he stood up for a little while. He really had reconstructed his spine. He had really gotten to some deep issues.
Wow.
And then quickly, I'll just say one more thing about Jim. On the point holding, there was another man who was almost 7 feet tall, and he had severe diabetes, and he had neuropathy in his extremities. So and this is why he had come to the one of Doug's courses. And again, he put Jim and I on either side of this man. He was also face down, so it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a preliminary. It was, he had already had several point holdings. And we were holding the point in the scapula, right in the mid scapula, the immuno point. And we were holding that on either side with an elbow. And literally the numbness from this man, the numbness that was coming out of this man. So the numbness crept, like just crept up my arm and crept up to my shoulder. And I was using my other hand to make sure I was still, you know, correctly on the point, because I had literally no feeling in my arm. And then the numbness started going up my neck, down my body, and basically, and Jim was experiencing the exact same thing. And by the time, we just kept holding it, you know, to the best of our abilities. And eventually he started to get to some, the man on the table began to get to some some transmutation, and he started to burn, and we got all our the numbness receded from the furthest point out. It started to recede and recede and recede, and it was a very, very long session. I think it was like at least a 4-hour session, because you don't leave the person on the table and you don't leave the point holders with numbness in their bodies. So, we had to stick with it until that numbness had receded. And the man on the table, who had really some great circulatory regeneration. It was amazing. I remember him saying that he started to feel his feet that he hadn't felt in his feet for a long time, or his fingertips, or even his nose, and that sort of thing. So he was really, really happy. And so it's just I'm pointing that out to show more about Jim Graham was a hardcore point holder. And yeah, I mean, I would always, internally hope that when I was on the table, I would get him, but of course, Doug was so intuitive that if you sort of premeditated that, he wouldn't put him on.
Yeah. It's yeah.
And the same goes for if you didn't want somebody. And we've all experienced that on body electronics. Let's face it. If there was somebody in the group and we were like, oh, whoever was doing the lineups, which in my case was Doug. But I've felt it too from my intensives, from the people. I can feel those energies coming from the people, and Doug was very aware of those as well. And the second I would be like, oh, please don't put that person on me, and sure as can be, that would be the person that Doug would pick to put on. So anyway, yeah. Okay, so somebody else take it away.
Well, I was just going to ask, is neuropathy like a disorder of the nervous system? You see this guy
it's like, the way I understand it, it's like and Jeffory, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's like a degenerative process through the nervous system, and of course fed by the circulatory system, which is quite pronounced many times in diabetics. It's just for their extremities. It starts in the end of your extremities. Like Doug used to do this. We used to do this thing. I don't know if I've done it too much in my courses. I'll have to start doing that again. He'd say, okay, take your, and he said, if you got as hard as you can pinch with your thumb and third finger, get right into there to that really, really tender spots, and really, really, really pinch there, and pinch all the way down, pinch all the way down to your tip of your third finger, and recognize the difference between here, how it feels between here, and how it feels between here, because it should be the same.
Yeah.
So did I give a good explanation of neuropathy, or am I?
Well, it's like any kind of diagnosis is just a word,
Right?
And there can be so many subsystems that so it's like, that's an umbrella term, neuropathy.
Yes.
Pathology of the nerve, that's what the root, they disguise the the simplicity of the language for the physical body and the terminology with Greek and Latin and whatever else they come up with. And a diagnosis is a lot of people, that's what people don't want to cure, they want a diagnosis. So it's just a game, it's a word game. And it's like when I was a chiropractor, you always had to give some kind of a diagnosis in order to ka-ching the insurance industry. So it's a game. Right. It's a word game.
Right.
And,
thank you.
So yeah, as far as I remember the experience vaguely, and that the guy was really a 7-foot guy. They was really impressed, but I don't remember very much more than that. But when you start talking about the 7-foot guy and the neuropathy, and that he had a good experience. I do remember that now that you mention it, but I hadn't thought of that in years.
Yeah, neither had I.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I want to throw in some stuff about some of the, like the symptomatology that you've described in a couple of cases where, the feeling, difference from the tip of the fingers to the arm, or with the person that had the very curled up posture and calcifications that were inbred in there. And like going back to our complex to simple analogy of this duality. But so my journey has been prenatal memory. And so I look at the guy curled up as he's reliving something that happened in the womb at the deepest layer. Now, outwardly, he would recreate the outer as a reflection of the inner. So whatever the environment is that we're gestating in, and up to about age 3 or 4, we all forget that. So I look at what is being experienced in the aging process as just a reflection of not only what we inherit, and what we experience, but also the generations from our ancestors. And that so there's like some of the stories John Ray would tell about when he was sunburned, and he put his nose in the camel, and he could tell you what the Bedouin tent looks like from a past life. When he healed the scurf rim out of the iris of his eye, you probably heard the story of his experience with the Kundalini after walking on the beach in Maui. He talks about it in some of his tapes, or it may be in his book. I don't know where I remember it, but I remember him talking about how a past life memory was still coming through in his iris. So it's like we're just an amalgamation of so many different energetic pathways through the spiritual, emotional, and physical bodies that just have an open mind. Don't go, no expectations. I think is one of the hardest things for people that are new to point holding. They have a symptom. Okay, I'm going to go to bioelectronics and I'm going to be healed of this.
Right.
But it's like that's your that was me. And back in the day, I wanted to heal my daughter Jennifer of her cerebral palsy. So that's what this resistance to having a child with a handicap is what drove me to the point of the things I experienced with my ex-wife and my family, in staying true to these principles I learned from John. So yeah, the simplicity that is coming up for me in my healing crisis as I'm going through get very simple, like yours that you talked about earlier about death and life. Just back into, I think, what would be memories from the womb, but that's just my theory on how the aging process is called death by natural causes. But really, if you look at it, it's what the body language is, not what the diagnosis is. But the body is, they're becoming childlike on the emotional level, and the physical is going, and these dominance of these memories from the womb just are considered to be, aging, and it's supposed to be a natural thing. So part of my desire would like, to the research on anti-aging that's going on now, and to, find ways of even to classify aging as a disease, and the true consciousness change that I envision as far as, the potential for each of us to conquer our own demise. I suppose it's a very high principle, but that's some of the, and that's just something that's coming. You guys can talk now. What do you want to say about something, Guy? You said something.
I really like that. Guy, go ahead.
Well, that sort of brings to mind this guy, a guy who was really into eternal youth, and I think we get into a lot of that in the sort of in the New Age movement, fasting, and I noticed you've been doing that your holistic fast recently, Illia.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wouldn't. No, I probably wouldn't talk about. I've never had a previous life memory. There's been a couple where I've thought maybe it's a previous life, and I've known a few people who claim to re-experience death on the table, like being, like buried alive or something. It sounded really horribly traumatic. And yeah, I think that was one of his sort of earliest point holdings. And, so yeah, you get the whole shebang on this program. Everything from I bumped my head on the cupboard, as mundane as that, and spend hours and hours dealing with bumping your head on your cupboard. And, it's sort of like any memory can be an entryway into mastery. Would that be a good way to put it? Yeah. I think that concept's kind of expressed well in Doug's book, and in and in your book, Illia, when you say something like take what you get and work with it.
Right.
So it's like we're embracing that active and passive duality. Like it's going to rise to us, and then we're going to run with it for a while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that expectation again, right? That comes in there because, we maybe expect it to be something like really fantastical, but it can be that bumping your head leads you into all kinds of, that's the bead on the string that Doug talks about in his book and how we heal.
Yeah.
So you find one memory, and then, you work with that. And if you transmute that, you can get to the core, which is the resistance pattern. You pull the string and all the beads fall. So that's just the analogy about how one very simple memory, along with emotion and the word pattern, can really lead us into a really tremendous change of consciousness. Yeah, I really appreciate that point. Yeah. Especially for the new people that are coming. There's been several new people coming into the work, and they're finding the videos, which I think that's one of the reasons I really want us to share more with video. And in that way they can gain a little bit of, every time they listen to one of these videos, even if they gain like one or two little points, I think that's enough, that this is a very slow and steady process. That's how I've experienced it. That's how I've seen everybody else experience it. It's not this, I know that there's people who have referred to me as old school body electronics, and I've been told this, that I've been referred to in this way, and that there's actually, there's people out there, they're not certified instructors, but they are doing some kind of what they're calling body electronics, but they've sped it up. That's one of their claims. They don't have to do it in that old methodical, slow Neanderthal way, right? Like they're like, bada boom, bada bing. You can get to a cranial, in a week. You can have your points held, and a week later you can get to a cranial, and the cranial only takes 20 minutes.
Wow.
There's literally people going out there and teaching body electronics in this way. So I am old school. I am what they call classic body electronics. That's what I see it as. It's how it's how it was passed down from John to Doug, and from Doug Morrison to me. And then I'm passing it to anybody who wants to, have the experience with me as the instructor. So it's a very slow process. I mean, I've been in it now for 24 years. I've been teaching for 20. And every day I am presented whether I even like it or not, I have to get to like it. I'm presented with greater healing crises, greater challenge, because we're literally moving the energy that has even formulated what we talked about earlier with the holistic construct. That holistic construct is nothing but words again, Jeffory. They're just words that represent things that we can then build upon. It gives the mind something to work with. And then, as we get a little further, then we have to let go of what we've transmuted, and we have to keep going and keep going and keep going. And as far as I'm aware, there's no end to it. I do have the feeling from internal experiences, and then I want to get to the death crystal, death life crystals, briefly, but I do want to touch upon that as we're moving forward, as we're evolving, the thing that we really have to keep in mind is to continually be completing the letting go process, completing the transmutation. And when we do that, we don't loop around in old healing crises. This is how I've experienced it over the years, because we can't. I've seen many people loop in the same word patterns, in the same processes of energy, so that they're observing, receiving, recreating, and releasing, but they're not getting that thorough release, what we call ORRR in body electronics. And that also can be looked at in depth, both in How We Heal and in Logic and Sequence series can be read about. But that's kind of like the progression that we go through. So we're observing, so we're observation to me is like a willingness. It encompasses the willingness, and then we have that willingness to receive. So in the receive part, that's when we're actively looking for the word pattern, the memory, and the emotion. We're really actively looking to experience that. We put those three things together, which is called recreation or re-experiencing. And when we do that, we do the transmutation, the encompassment in the emotional body. That's the three powers: love, forgiveness, and gratitude. And then when we move into the mental body, it becomes transmutation through light, through the application, through the awareness and application of light. But we can also say that about the three powers. We become aware of those and become more and more and more aware of them as we move up scale. What the awareness that we have of love, gratitude, and forgiveness, and unconsciousness and apathy is very different than the experience and the awareness that we have of it, let's say from fear up, especially from anger, pain, and enthusiasm. I mean, that those three powers that are always with us. We are that, but we become more and more and more aware of it. So just to know that this is a process that we have to continually up our willingness. We have to continually up those four things: those observe, receive, recreate or re-experience, and release. But always to remember the release, the letting go. Otherwise, we're going to be looping around in those other three. And so we don't want to waste time, in looping, but we're not rushing things either. So always, and by getting to that point of a full release, really letting it go, we go into a whole new level of willingness then, and more healing crises will come. There's no end to it as far as I know.
Yeah, the one thing Oh, cool. One of the areas I've been moving in is opening this office here at where the energy enhancement system is. And I was going to get back with you from last time
Yes.
about what it appears to put me into healing crises when I spend time in the energy field that's created by this EE system. And so I've been still experiencing that and still testing it within my own being. And because one of the issues for those people that are listening and for us that are talking is the challenge with gathering to where we can hold points on one another because of all the factors going on right now. And this EE system is being given to the public. And there's been over 100 centers opened in the United States last year, just to give you an idea of the interest level of entrepreneurs putting out $250,000 so that, they can, hang a shingle out and have people come and lay in this field. So if anybody listening knows where an EE system is, you can go to the eesystem.com and you can find a center in your area and you can go try it out and see if you're on the minerals and stuff, it puts you into healing crisis like I've been experiencing by just putting myself into this energy field. And I had my points held enough. And with the instructor seminar, we don't hold points on each other anyway. We learn how to do the love, light, and perfection without having someone elicit the pain, because we have developed this intuition about plus the meters. They tell us when we're either bullshitting ourselves or we're actually going into the emotional body or the mental
the
body.
the VNC, the visualization and consciousness course.
Yeah. So yeah, I've talked with the owners here about you teaching. It's still very much in its infancy. I personally can't practice here because I'm not licensed, but my partner Jo is. So she's actually the one that has put out her professional license, and she's licensed in Missouri. So I'm just basically coming in from the farm where I live 2 or 3 days a week so that I can use the technology, and then I go back to the farm out away from all the EMFs, and I'm doing the minerals. So I'm just kind of testing it on myself, but I just want to give you a little feedback. One of the word patterns that's coming real strong lately is nobody hears me and nobody sees me. And relating that back to my prenatal journey and the feeling that that's probably what every one of us felt in the womb, because, with the destruction of the fetus and the abortion issues and all that goes on with what it's like, we'd rather not look at that, and the reflection of that in society is we can kill the little feller, but we're not going to monitor it and let it tell us actually that what we've been doing to our young for eons is we're the only mammal that does it, and that's to have sex during pregnancy. And that's what creates this anoxic insult injury that then comes back and haunts us in the aging process. But this feeling of it's been such an intense healing crisis to just love and make it okay. Nobody hears me, nobody sees me. And if you're trying to promote yourself or promote a way of healing, it's just like, okay, wow, that must be true for everybody on a very deep level.
At least for body electronics.
If you're trying to promote body electronics, you've already tapped into it, so this. But to have the courage in the face of knowing that nobody hears me and nobody sees me, and to make it okay, that somehow by me loving this feeling, it's going to awaken it within everybody else. And that's the role I play in the silence. But it's very real, and I get to, and what I'll do is I'll wake up at like 3:30, 4:30 in the morning, and my body will be burning, especially in the heart area. I've had a few with numbness and stuff down the arms, but anyway, it's definitely a healing crisis, and I definitely am able to move through it, love it, release it, and it's just uncharted territory. I think it probably ties in similar to what the death and life crystal you were mentioning. So maybe you could talk about that a little and how
Sure.
you feel that relates.
Well, you mentioned it too, Guy. I worked with the death crystals and life crystals, you know, that great duality that we're living here on Earth for years at Doug's intensives. So it was like, and it wasn't premeditated. I would get on the table and I would be going into a death experience. And that was probably at least 2 or 3 years after I started doing serious point holding. So I've had many life death experiences relived and released. Some of the resistance, at least. I'm very aware that I still have resistance to the life death crystals, and you know, I'm working very I wouldn't say diligently, but when they come up, I do my best to be willing to receive and you know, re-experience and release. So those experiences, when we get to those past death, you know, in other realities, and not even necessarily in the reality of Earth. You know, there's lots of realities out there. There's lots of you know, we've done a lot. If we're a human on Earth right now, we've got a lot of experience under our belt, and you know, there's all kinds of things that can come to the surface and to be, you know, re-experienced and released. What I've been really looking at recently, and it was interesting because it was you know, sometimes they were close death experiences. Like one was, I feel very like within, like, let's say the last 50 years, and then like prior to my birth, and then before that, like I had timelines, and I knew, you know, what they looked like. And just to add this in here, the timeline doesn't necessarily have to be in the past either. We can see our future experience and the resistance we have there, and bring that into the awareness to be released. So it's, you know, it's not necessarily all about the past. But recently I've been looking at not from the past or the future, but of the present. So in other words, the life death crystals that I'm holding in this body, and the resistance I have with that. And that makes it, you know, I had worked a lot, like I said, of all these sort of past experiences. You know, I've had I recovered 2 burnings at the stake, and went through those over and over and over again, like several point holdings that took me before they didn't start continue to come up anymore. I've had a drowning. I've had, you know, there's been all these several different methods. You know, we used to make jokes about it, like how many ridiculous ways can we, you know, figure out how to kill ourselves. And you know, it's funny, not funny, right?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So but now it's gotten like, it's so real, this healing crisis that I was sharing earlier before I pressed record. I was sharing earlier that I've been going through this healing crisis on and off. It's been very cyclical, and it started in April of 2020. It was nearing the end of April. I think it was like April 28th, 29th, something like that. And when I started going through these experiences, and, you know, literal physical experiences, not when I choose to get on the table and work with things, or not when I'm making time, which I do every day. These experiences are coming when I least expect it. And that takes tremendous amounts of willingness to go through it and see all the little aspects, some that, you know, we touched on today, where we have to be, we have to see how we want to fix something, how we want to make it go away, you know, certain symptoms, certain experiences within the physicality, you know, that, and coming to that threshold, you know, that threshold where you feel like there's nothing but a fine silk thread between life and death, and you're there. And it's very powerful and very interesting experience.
Wow.
Very different than being on the table. What I call, you guys know this, but people watching may not, I call the intensives, the point holding intensives, I call that the body electronic spa, because we have the, you know, we have a community of people around us. We have a certified instructor. We have, you know, that container, that energetic container, that community really of people. And we've all come to that with, you know, with dedication and the willingness to prepare and, you know, and be of best service, you know, that we can to our, you know, to everybody else that's there, all the other participants. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Guy, I think you better catch up on some time here.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, I've just been
Put you on the spot.
sort of, yeah, there was a few things that I've been reflecting on lately. One of them is how we think just about everyone, or maybe every point holding group, has a person who has one little health problem they really have to get rid of, and they really want to fix it. Just never goes away because they're kind of constantly resisting it.
Right.
So they're never really doing, I guess, doing the work honestly. Maybe this is a little off topic. I don't know.
No,
it's one thing I've been
great.
reflecting
No,
on
keep going.
lately. Like I think you brought up a lady. Was her name Jane?
Jane Brown.
I don't remember. I mean, yeah. So I've been like that. I've had a similar thing with my eyesight where I didn't, you know, I sort of wanted to heal it. You know, I didn't heal it, and then thought, well, I better, you know, be careful what I'm doing here. And so I've been reflecting on that a bit lately. And the other thing was, my friend said during point holding about how he grew up during the 1950s and 60s, and his parents back then used to smack the kids a lot. And you know, as soon as they stepped out of line, you know, smack, you know. And my friend said, you know, Dad would whack us with whatever he had in his hand, whatever it was. And I remember thinking, this must be just so traumatic. It must have done so much damage, because, you know, when I've come out of your intensives, Illia, and your, you know, after cranial work, I was so sensitive to everything, like my sort of emotional, I know the emotional equivalent of my nerves was so highly functioning. You know, I could feel the slightest pain. You know, someone looking at me disapprovingly was hurtful. You know, or maybe not hurtful, but I could feel kind of attack on it. And so I sort of got wondering on this, and you know, we often wonder, like, how can these people in the world be so obedient to, you know, government and media and these kind of sort of official channels that constantly lie and deceive and spin half truths. And I sort of thought, you know, you can look at people's trauma and see how the trauma's kind of, how it must have affected people societally, because as soon as, like, my friend's generation stepped out of line, it was painful. You know, as soon as they were disobedient to the external truth or the external God, or what, sort of the not real one, they felt pain. So that's something I've been reflecting on lately.
Mm.
With BE, we sort of know we've got to be obedient to I guess, the real internal principles, like the principles governing the physical body, the emotional body, actually the mental body, and so on.
Yeah, that really correlates to that duality, or that contradiction in truth and untruth. You know, those they can seem the same but be entirely different. You know.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like earlier you mentioned going from some complexity at sort of halfway through the healing crisis to simplicity, enthusiasm, or simplicity, unconsciousness. And much of my life, I think I've sort of lied to myself about being a enthusiastic person when really I was just being unconscious or apathetic with regard to various situations. And it's a continuum, so it's not like you just have one level of enthusiasm and one level of unconsciousness. You just have them sort of constantly stepping in like a ladder. So you go from one to another, but it's very easy to sort of wallow in unconsciousness and just think you're being enthusiastic. Really, you're just being apathetic.
Yeah, the emotional body is so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
As we and I think reflective of that, like how we can look back on, you know, we have decades between us. I mean, you know, the experience of the three of us, we have several decades of experience of the healing crises going through the emotional body. Particularly for me, was always such a you know, it's like when you think you think you've arrived, or there's this feeling of arrival at certain points in the you know, when you let something go and you really have transmuted something, and you just have this euphoric feeling, and there's this feeling of arrival, you know, this um, whatever that arrival is, you know, that feeling of you know, deepened awareness, and able to, what you just described, like able to um, really able to feel, you know, not just yourself, but what's going on around you. But then before you know it, there's a whole new level.
Mm.
And as we know, you know, we get to that enthusiasm, or that you know, that feeling where that encompasses everything and transmutes. But then the next step, the very next step above that, is another layer of unconsciousness.
Mm.
And that is so humbling. When I look at my own journey of transmutation, I mean, that is just tremendously humbling to have that. You know, you feel like I've been on the table and felt like I could levitate, or maybe I was even levitating, and really have that in, you know, immense awareness of love, which is what we call enthusiasm in BE. That, or what you know, it's been termed as God in you, or the, you know, the essence. I like to see it as more like the energy, the essence within us, that is of yeah, of love, of that energy that we call love. And then to experience that, and then be willing not to even wallow in love, not to even be willing to wallow in enthusiasm, but to be willing to jump forward again into a new, improved level of unconsciousness, apathy, grief,
Mm.
on and on, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Yeah.
So we can, you know, we can, if we've made it up to the pain, the level of pain, we've really been willing to do that over and over and over and over again. So I think that's just a great thing for people to especially new people, to realize when they're coming into it. There'll be those times when they get the euphoria of transmutation, but yet right around the corner, if we're willing, is a whole new level of healing crises. I want somebody to touch on, either one of you can jump in here, because it was touched upon earlier, but I wanted to go maybe a little bit further of the morphogenetic or morphogenic field that we create when we're doing transmutation, when we're each doing a transmutation, and what happens then with morphogenetically, or I hear a lot of people just call it morpho. They've kind of changed it into morpho, but in body electronics for decades we've called it morphogenetic or morphogenic. So somebody want to jump
in? Yeah, that's one of my go-to ways that I deal with the level of loneliness I've been asked to experience by following this path. Just to let people know, I have 4 children and 19 grandchildren. I've never seen any of my grandchildren.
Wow.
Because of the level of resistance to these principles that I first applied to my oldest daughter, Jennifer. So my 4 children, and so the willingness to, morphogenetic resonance, I have this saying on my business card that says, to heal my world, I heal myself. It's that simple. And so, and instead of trying to change what I've experienced or look outside of myself for the answer, ever since I've experienced such a high level of abandonment feelings by my support system that I thought, would never leave me. That this, no matter what I do, they could never leave. But to find that, to have that hope that initially put me on this path of helping my daughter through the morphogenic resonance is the only pathway I have of raising their consciousness, by me continuing to go deeper into the morphogenic resonance that I received from my ancestors and that I passed on to them. Is by raising my consciousness, there's no way that they can not be blessed or raised in consciousness. Even though I don't get credit, I'm not seen for it, I'm not acknowledged for it. I mean, that's the love I have for this principle of morphogenic resonance, and it's what helps me maintain sanity is hearing tidbits about changes that my children are experiencing, that I see as a shift in consciousness. But lately, it's just been such it's like this the fine line. You talk about silk, this division between that is the morphogenic field, that we're all connected as one body. If you're not one, you're not mine, I think is a commonly accepted phrase or understanding, that we're all in this together, wherever we are residing. And so the family, and this is what I experience, is the family is one of the biggest separators when it comes, it's like this whole death and dying process is about, okay, I put up with whatever mom and dad did to me in the womb, and so I was actually giving them youthfulness through the telegenetics or something like that, where the fetus communicates and gives stem cells to the mom, and the mom glows when she's pregnant. And then later on in the dividing up the estate, when somebody dies, that's when all the family shows up, because we had to put up with you back then. We took on your stuff, and now we get to come back, and this is our payback. And so this whole monetary system is based on this, the first thing I call it, which is our placenta that we built. That was our first toy. And so this materialism is all based on this belief that something outside of ourselves, which was our placenta in the womb, can actually make us happy. And really, happiness has to come from an inside job. So I hope that puts a little bullet into this whole thing of materialism and gifts and gift giving, and how you can buy a person with money or whatever, because we're all in this together. I don't know. Does that make any sense, or am I just
No, I
saying
really
stuff?
feel that. Yeah. No, I feel that. I get it.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, the morphogenic resonance is real. We can help. We can't control though. It's like, and that's been the hardest part for me, is letting go of that patriarchal thing that's bred into us. You know, like the kids are. I'm here to teach the kid, but really, what's the table is turned, and I'm being taught not by just my children, but also the fetal memories of my own little boy and what I experienced. So, and a child shall lead them, you know, that takes on a whole another meaning. And he asks the question, well, how little are the fetal memories actually the dominant ones that we all have within us? And we're trying to actually recreate that. That's why we have kids in the family. And that's the whole structure, is based on trying to recreate which was cut off at birth, our other half. And so in the womb, it's 3 people. And so that's what a family, you know, that's why people come together. They create another reflection of their own consciousness. And this is what we call family ties. But if you look at the separation that goes on in the world, where everybody has their own zip code, their own social security number, whatever you're, you know, but it's all based on separation. It's not, you know, that heaven on earth thing that I think we all believe at some point can happen. But anyway, it's one other thing I want to point out is that in the womb, and this is something that happened to me early on, was I'm toothless. In other words, I don't have any metal in my meridians, and that's the way as it was in the womb. And I really believe the only reason I'm able to know about the prenatal memories at the level I do is because when I had all my teeth pulled, then I did a lot of, you know, body electronics rebirthing, and I combined the concept of pain being the capstone of memory with the concept of nasal pain. So I curled up in the ball like they do in rebirthing with a snorkel and a nose plug, and I got comfortable, which I'd done for over 5 years, and I loved rebirthing. But I thought about what's the nasal pain we resist, because we had water in our nasal area. So I just gently brought the water across my nasal membrane, stayed still in the fetal position, and it burned really bad up in the area here. And my belly button started to pulse. And this was 1994. And I haven't been able to turn this pulse off ever since. And I recognized this pulse immediately as the same pulsing I felt underneath my fingers every time I got done holding points. So this is like bridging the gap. Like, we all know this very simple universal pulse that anyone who's ever been a midwife, you know, you wait till the cord stops pulsing before you cut the cord. That's the pulse that I reanimated by loving the pain that we all experience when we get water up our nose. But I couldn't have remembered in a pure sense this pulsing if I hadn't have crossed paths with the information and the metal in the teeth, the dental and the medical profession. They don't want to let the cat out of the bag, so they save the tooth at all costs. But I've recently crossed paths with a man here in St. Louis, and you can Google him. His name is Dr. Simon Y-U. He's a medical doctor, and he does the Vol acupuncture meridian assessment. And he's found that he can balance the meridians according to the meridian assessment. But sometimes he does have to pull teeth. He finds dental infections, and he finds, because the dentist won't pull the teeth, but he's been able to find a way using parasite and fungus medication. You can read about it, but he said everybody's got parasites and fungus. After they get their dental, you know, you still have this parasitic fungal relationship. But anyway, you can check him out online. He's actually interested in the center here, and I'm trying to create a way where he can measure the before and after when people laying in the field, like we, you know, have some kind of a documentation. And that's kind of where I'm going with this center, is creating a liaison with his dentist. So you can, if anybody listening is curious, he does take patience. I'm not no financial gain by telling you that, but it's a long waiting list to get to see him. But anyway, yeah, he's from Korea. Yeah, and he's a good man and he's very frustrated with the dentist not being able to pull the teeth, because he says if you don't, he sees the health issues as related to the meridian testing, and if people will do what he says, he can balance the meridians, and the health and the balance comes back. You know, we're not talking about going through healing crises. I'm just, when people have come from the place of the disillusionment of, you know, the metal in the mouth is okay, and they don't understand how it's affecting their whole energy body, their whole electrical body. And I know John Ray talked about this a lot, and that was eventually a point that people come to in the body electronics and instruction is dealing with the metal in the teeth. I chose to have my teeth out, although I'd heard of John Ray's work. I crossed paths with this Reinhold Voll's work. And I think this is one of the reasons that keeps me feeling nobody hears me, nobody sees me, because everybody still has a mouthful of metal and teeth in their mouth. So there's something about the primal pulse that I tapped into that I never would have tapped into if I hadn't been crazy enough at 32 years old to have my teeth pulled when I saw my parents get better from cancer after having their teeth pulled, based on the work of Reinhold Voll. And you can look him up too, Reinhold Voll, V-O-L-L. Anyway, there's a lot to what I'm saying that keeps people from experiencing greater levels of body electronics, of consciousness change, because it just keeps everything so numbed down. And then with the drugs and the air, food, and water pollutions, we really need to come out fighting. And I'm glad that you guys are willing to spend time with me. I'm a radical, you know, I call myself a peaceful warrior, if that's a term. But
well, the
anyway.
mercury amalgam definitely has to come out, and it has to be done. I've gone from the simplicity complexity back into the simplicity around that issue, because I had a lot of mercury in my mouth as a child. Like I would say probably between the ages of 10 and 14 or something like that. There was like this push on mercury. I was born in 1959, so that gives you an idea of the timing. And so then when I became aware, I was I was always aware of the detriment, but when I became willing to actually have them removed, I was in my late 20s. And so I had all of the mercury removed from my mouth at that time, over a period, I think, of about a year. And that I really saw like a tremendous improvement in it was mostly energetic is how I felt it. But you mentioned my 43-day fast guy, which I've been putting on my Facebook group, and the odd one I'll pop over. I'm back on Twitter. I'm not Illia Hart on Twitter. I did pop a couple of those over there, but I don't have a lot of people following me yet. So, but I'm putting every day. It started on the 1st of January, and I'm putting every day. We're up to day 17 today, and one day is devoted to the teeth. I often refer to Doug's book, How We Heal, and some of his writings and my experience. But it's very progressive, the 43-day holistic fast. So anyway, anybody who would, and it's entirely free. So anybody who wants to tune into that. I wrote it originally. This is my 3rd year doing it. And I wrote it originally spontaneously, but then I've edited it, I figured it out this year. I started editing it like around the 1st of November, and I probably got between 400 and 500 hours of writing and editing into it. So it's and it's a great example of simplicity to complexity, to simplicity. There's lots of links in it, and you can really go down rabbit holes if you choose. But it's based on body electronics. It does have a body electronics foundation, and I think you know, after I looked at how it came into being, I looked back in retrospect and I saw that it's really a template for the healing crises. That's really what it is, to just you know, encourage and embrace the healing crises, and how to work your way into doing that. So so please, anybody who wants to clue into that, it's mostly on Facebook and on the Body Electronics group page, Body Electronics, the Evolution of Consciousness on Facebook. So I think we should, what do we got? We've been about an hour and 20, maybe not quite that, but close to that. So maybe we could wrap it up if you each would like to take a little bit of time, and then I'll have the last word, and we'll call it a wrap.
Sure. Well, you mentioned morphogenetic resonance and telegeny before, and it reminded me of I remember that guy Rupert Sheldrake. John used to recommend his book called A New Science of Life, and one of the things he pointed out in that book was there was a real similarity of in nature, where like you think of a snail shell, and it's got this kind of spiral in the center of it, and we have the same pattern on ferns over here, like the fronds of the ferns, they sort of curl up into this beautiful little spiral kind of thing. And yeah, Sheldrake pointed out in this book that all these patterns recur over and over again in nature. And he said, and I don't know anything about geology, but he said this appears even in rocks and minerals, and it sort of makes sense. I think, like, I remember chemistry from university years ago, and you have all these different sort of crystalline structures. But in people, it's been really cool, part of my sort of healing, to connect with my family better. Like I realized that in one of my healing crises a few years back, I was missing out on a lot of opportunity to spend time with my sort of relatives and my family, you know, cousins and aunts and uncles and stuff like that. So part of sort of setting that right has just been, you know, doing my best to honor them and good to them and just spend time with them and be a part of their lives as well, I think. And I just say, as a way of saying goodbye, I'm just reminded maybe 5 minutes ago of every time we have one of your intensives, Illia, I've been to 3 of them, and at the end of it, we always sort of know each other so much better, and there's always so much, you know, gratitude between all of the people, and it's almost like the colors are brighter, and, you know, all the feelings are stronger, and there's this beautiful kind of calmness and peace at the end of it, and sort of emotional honesty at the end of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so thank you for all of those beautiful moments.
Looking forward to some more. This is a great spot for my plug. So I've rented the venue for my first event in my first intensive in Canada in 2023. It's going to be from June 5th to 9th, a 5-day event, point holding event, right here near Nelson, British Columbia. So people are starting to prepare now for that, and of course, preparation, the sooner people start to prepare, the better. And I'm available online to guide people through that process of preparation. So would you like the last word, Jeffory?
No, I'm glad to hear that you're planning a point holding thing. That's very encouraging. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. I found the perfect venue, just absolutely perfect. Lots of bathrooms, no close neighbors that we can disturb through noise, and it's even right down by the water, so people can go on a nice little walk along the water during their lunchtime. And yeah, and in June is like the perfect time around here as far as weather goes. Things are nice and warm and fresh. So
How how's the best way to travel there from the US?
Well, there's a couple of ways. There's several ways, but there's a couple of if you're coming from the US, then like I said, Spokane is the closest airport in the US, and then people can drive quite easily from there to Nelson, or you can fly over to there's a international airport called Kelowna, starting with a K. That airport has a shuttle, so that you can be shuttled. But you have to really watch the shuttles because there's only one shuttle a day. So you have to get a hotel room for the night if it doesn't connect with that one shuttle to Nelson. So there's that one. And then there's another airport that's very close. It's called Castlegar. And that one is only 30 minutes outside of Nelson. But it's often like you fly into Vancouver and then over to Castlegar. So it's the closest airport, yet it's also the one that is canceled most often through weather, which means you would be, hanging out in Vancouver until you have to come back each day, and eventually you get on. June shouldn't be an issue, but you never know what the weather is going to look like. So those are kind of the options.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I had looked at it a bit, but it was like it seemed like yeah, I needed someone with experience. That seemed like quite a little tangled web to get up there. But
Yeah, it's actually quite easy. It's easy now. Our borders are open, so it's very easy to come. Your border isn't open to Canadians. I hear that it's been postponed again till April the 30th, and then the US president is going to look at what he's going to do after that. So, but our borders are completely open.
so to drive, like, let's say I just got in my car and drove to Spokane and then crossed the border.
Yeah.
Do I have to have the inoculation to cross?
You do not. No, you do not.
Okay.
But just your passport. But no, you don't need. We've opened up our borders to the uninjected. That's what I mean by opening our borders.
That's really, is that new? I mean, I hadn't heard that.
It happened about 2 months ago, 2 to 3 months
Wow.
ago. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Thinking of Braveheart, freedom.
Yes, yes. But it's not freedom for Canadians because we still can't leave, right? So
Terrible.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we can go to whoever has their borders open. We can't fly in or around the US.
Wow.
so if I was, you couldn't fly to see me. You couldn't do it right now.
No.
Okay.
I can't go over the border legally into the US. No. I can go to everywhere else, like south of the border. I can go to Vancouver and fly to from Vancouver to Mexico, Costa Rica, anywhere south of the border.
Really? But they won't let you come from the south across either.
No, no.
Okay. That's curious.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anybody's interested in that,
Thank you to both of you. Yeah, this has been good.
I should
We
give
just,
my email
just keep
address.
talking again and do it again next week. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
let's try again for next, or not try, we'll actually do it for Tuesday of next week. I'll just give my email address for those watching, for people who are either interested and want to ask me questions about how to prepare, or if they want, I call it the intent to attend in June. I'm not asking for any money up front. I don't want, until I know that there's going to be at least 12. To rent a venue, I need at least 12 people to to have it be viable on many levels, energetically for the people particularly. And so I'm not asking for any deposits or anything like that. I'm just asking for a written intent to attend, which means that you are preparing. You're preparing physically, nutritionally, You're preparing psychologically with the reading material, and I highly recommend. Some of the people that are preparing are having a weekly or bi-weekly sessions with me. My sessions are 100% by donation. They can give a donation or not, whatever people feel to do. I'm available to make those, to have those sessions. So the email address is bodyelectronics1, that's a number 1, at gmail.com. So that's the email address that I've been relegated to just having for the intensives. And I do have I have a desire to go to Southwest Ontario, to Lake Huron, which is the picture I took of Lake Huron, which is behind me today. I do have a desire to go there and teach another intensive, which will probably be only about 3 days. That was what I got, at least. But if there was, many participants that wanted to come and wanted it longer, I would definitely make it longer. So, but at least a 3-day point holding event, Southwestern Ontario, which is sort of near, in between London and Sarnia area on the shores of Lake Huron. The venue I find there may be in or near Sarnia, which is a border town to Michigan. And so those are the 2 that I have been inspired to put out this year. So, and I'm available for remote teaching for anybody who has either studied with me, and I know that those people can actually direct a point holding group with correct points. So so I have put myself out, and I do that in a couple of places right now, and it works. I do like a morning, midday, and follow up later in the day, sort of a Q&A at the end of the day. Did you want to ask something?
Yeah, just like for the owners here and people that would be interested that are staff, you would be willing to do like an hour or teaching session, just kind of an introduction?
It would probably need to be more like 2 hours.
2 hours.
I have a slideshow, an introductory slideshow, and I'm going to actually do that very soon.
2 hour introductory, okay, with slide.
Yeah. So I have a slideshow that I provide, and it's one of those things where I take very complex, the complexities of body electronics. I think I put it into like 25 slides or something like that. And it has a progression, very much like, the evolutionary progression that we experience. So and then I just talk through the slideshow, and then we do a little bit of Q&A at the end.
Okay. Yeah, because that's something I would like to share with the owners here is something that they're completely unfamiliar with, but just a place to start, right?
Right. That would be great.
Although they're very much interested in consciousness change and the emotional body pain, and one owner's a massage therapist, so I think the door would open if we just set some. I'll talk to them, and then I'll get back with you and see if we can set up a time, because they have, like, in the evenings they have the business is closed from like 7 o'clock till 10 o'clock, and then they offer the overnights for like 8 hours if people want to sleep in the field for an overnight. So there's a time there where they want to have events, and I think this would fit in that area of an event to bring in an online instructor.
Okay.
Illia Hart. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you, both of you, so much. This is really inspiring. And I'll pop this up on my website and on the that Body Electronics group page on Facebook. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Thanks,
guys. Good to
Thank
see
you. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
See you, Illia.